15 feet, 8 feet.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, welcome to Comic Book Pros, presented by the Lake Como Comic Art Festival, an interview show where we talk to some of the most interesting and creative comic artists working today. I'm your host, Scott Dunbier, ready to take you on another ride through the colorful world of comic art.
Comic Book Pros is sponsored by the Lake Como Comic Art Festival, and I want to tell you about what makes this thing so special. Join us May 17th to 19th for 3 days celebrating comic art against the stunning backdrop of Lake Como, Italy. Are you ready for an unforgettable experience? Whether you're a seasoned comic collector or just dipping your toes into the world of comic art, the Lake Como Comic Art Festival has something for everyone. Who says you shouldn't meet your heroes? At Como, you'll have the chance to meet some of the biggest names in the industry. Legendary artists, writers, creators, and with only 1,000 attendees, you'll for sure have the opportunity to meet and interact with your favorites in real life. Don't miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to celebrate your love for comics in the picturesque setting of Lake Como. The Lake Como Comic Art Festival is happening May 17th to 19th, 2024, and tickets are limited, so reserve your slot today. You can find tickets and more at www.LCCAF.com. That's www.lccaf.com. Don't miss out on this exclusive event.
Today, we have a special episode that is different from our usual format. We are talking to the co-founders of the Lake Como Comic Art Festival, Arnaud Lepere and Steve Morger, about the festival and why they want to bring so many incredible artists together for this special event. Hey guys, how's it going?
Very good, thank you.
Hello, Scott.
All right, so first, can you both introduce yourselves and what is your connection to the comic business? Why don't we start with you, Arnaud?
Comic books. Well, I have stores in Paris and Bordeaux. I started really young while I was still in school, doing part-time job in comic book shops. And this is where I met my future business partner, Claude, and then also. And this is, I just continued to work part-time until I did a very long trip, 1 year off to travel. And when I returned, we became a business partner, and we started to really expand the stores we had in Paris, which was at the beginning only one, and it evolved into different stores. Each store focused on a different aspect, comic book or figures, toys. At some point, we had a Pulp's art store, which was entirely art books and sketchbooks. So we tried a lot of different stores. But right now, we are primarily focusing on comic books, French, American, and toys. And at some point, we did in the 2000 early 10s, we organized the comic book convention in Paris, and this is how we met with Steve, because we are both doing a convention, each one of us on one of the side of the globe.
All right, Steve.
Yeah, my history goes back to when I was about 5. My mom said she didn't care what I read as long as I read, and comic books were my book of choice. I'm a pack rat, so I collected comic books until basically ran out of space, started collecting art, started meeting comic artists from buying them and becoming friends with them, and then met a guy named Steve Wyatt, who had been putting on shows forever. He and I partnered up along with a couple other people and created Big Wow Comic Fest in San Jose. And at that point, Arnaud and I met because he was doing the Paris Comic Expo. We were both similar interests, focusing on art and artists first, and then the other aspects of comic book conventions as well, media, cosplay, and the like. And so we got to be good friends, talking about what worked, what didn't work for conventions, planning and stuff like that. And then as it ended up, both of our shows, for reasons beyond our control, went out of existence at about the same time, mine in 2015 and Arnaud's in 2016.
All right. So Why comic art? What's your passion for comic art?
Um,
What
I'll,
inspires you?
I'll start on this. Is, number one, having learned to read on comic books, and then that taught me how to read, regular books, textbooks, and, God forbid, law books, because I'm a lawyer now. I attribute a lot to the success that I've had to comic books. And so it is a passion and a love of mine. And, when you talk to people that read comic books, you either have the people that are pro writers, pro artists. I got to meet a lot more artists, so I definitely fall more on the art side. And so I've been a big art collector, going back many years to even a dealer who's sitting on the other side of this camera. Because I think that's how we met, Scott, when
That's
you were
right.
when you were dealing.
That's
So,
right.
so the art's always been an important part of it, and it's, as we'll talk about, I'm sure later. As our shows, Big Wow Comic Fest and Paris Comic Expo grew, the logistics and the headaches grew as well, which kind of dictated to me that, doing a show like San Diego or New York is not in my genes. Doing a much smaller focused show is much more what I'm interested in, because it deals with the stuff I really like, with the people I really like, and as we'll talk about, in a location I really like. So,
All right. And Arno?
Well, it's funny because for comic books, it's about the same. And I think a lot of people can relate, that goes back to kind of the same age, when you're 5 and you just can't imagine spending 2 seconds of your day without a book in your hand. It's just like, you can imagine, you try to find any excuse you can get just to get 2 minutes to be able to progress on your story, and to just, you just want to stay all day long in this world. And that's, that became, this passion became my job. And again, we wanted to work on all the different aspects, not just the store, but some publishing. We did some art book publishing also, and we always had, with my partners, a lot of interaction with the different artists to not just work on the retail side, but just continue to, have a more global vision. So this is how we ended up producing art books, and also doing the convention, because we were so passionate about this. And it's really similar, and this is how we got along so well, because we had a similar experience in the conventions we did. Paris Comic Expo also was a much bigger event. We had at the last edition about 17,000 attendees, and it was like a more of a family-orientated show with TV celebrities, with cosplayers, but we were making sure we were focusing all the time on the comic books and the artists. And we wanted to keep it focused on that aspect, and not open it to something else, because it was easy to fill it with, anything, sabers, dealers, who would have like huge stands. But so, as much as these made sense back in these conventions, that was not the primarily, interest we had in these conventions, which was the artists and the comic books. So this is really where both Steve and ours interest, really got together, because we had the same, really same vision of what we wanted to do, and what we wanted to focus on, and what we wanted to work on.
Why Lake Como? And what makes the Lake Como Comic Art Festival so different from a regular comic book convention? Even some of the great European shows like Angoulême or Lucca. What makes Lake Como different?
the Lake Como location is my fault, if it's a fault. I've been going to Como for probably close to 30 years. And when Big Wow ended up, I decided that since I'm going every couple years, I might as well buy an apartment there. And so in 2016, I was going back and forth, got an apartment, and by that time, Big Wow was gone. And I had this idea of doing an art show, but, other than a pipe dream, it really wasn't much. But I saw that the Sheraton in Chernobyl was advertising convention space. I took a flyer, went to visit it. It was not very accommodating. It just didn't work for what I wanted. I was talking to the people at the hotel. They said, well, have you ever checked out the Villa Erba? And I had not. I didn't even know it. There are a number of amazing villas on Lake Como that you can visit. Apparently Villa Erba is one of them, but I also didn't know it was a convention center as well. So I asked them where it was. It was right across the street from the Sheraton. They called ahead, got me to be allowed to go in. I looked at it, and it was one of those, oh my God moments, because you walk in and it's just acres of garden space centered around an ancient villa with frescoes and mosaics and grand staircases, again, right on the lake. And next door to it was a modern convention center. And it was a little funky setup because there's a bunch of little rooms instead of one huge room, which again, I liked because it didn't make it look like it's this big flea market. And so when I saw that, I got on the phone and called Arno, since he's only an hour and a half away, and said, you've got to come down and see this. And he did, and came down and had the same reaction that I did, which is just, oh my God, it's perfect for what we were thinking about doing. So that's the answer to part one. I don't know if Arno, if you want to jump in on part one before I keep rambling on part two.
No, yeah, it's at that time it's true that I was done with conventions organization. The last edition I had done was really great, and everybody loved it. It was an exceptional show, but me, I was dead after. I said no more. And there was also a lot of competition rising from Reed exhibition coming, and anyway, lots of factors that said that's it. I've already got so much to do on the side and projects to work on. So don't talk to me about events and organizations of a festival or something. That's it. Let's move on. And then that's when Steve called.
So obviously the main driving force here is the money, because obviously you guys are just making a buttload of cash doing this show. Of course I'm kidding, but obviously it shows your true passion for doing a show like this, because it is such a beautiful venue, such a great location. It doesn't come cheap. But anyway, I digress. How long?
I could probably buy another apartment on Lake Como if I had not done this show.
Yeah, this is what we said. We said all the money we lost combined, I think we would have like a really nice villa in the lake. So yeah, but it will come in for when I retire. I don't know.
Yeah, but this is what life is all about, having wonderful experiences. So how long have you guys been running the show? Did you say earlier 2017, Steve? 2016?
2018 and 2019 were the first 2 years. Obviously nothing in 20 and 21.
Right.
And this area of Italy is one that got pounded pretty hard with COVID. And then we've had 2 editions since. The one coming up in May of 2024 will be our 5th edition of the show.
All right, great. And what's new in 2024?
New artists, new panels, an improved portfolio, some other swag, a great logo created by Bill Sienkiewicz for us, and Bill will be in attendance at the show.
Great.
Each year we try to add something new and fine-tune what's happened in the past to make it better and better. This year we expect to have probably 70 to 80 of the top tier artists from around the world. We've got our first artist coming in from, I don't know, he's been announced, at this moment, but coming in from Africa, from South
Really?
Africa, Warren
Oh, that's
Lowe.
great. Oh, nice.
So adds another continent. So we've gotten, we've had people from Japan, Singapore, Australia, South America, Mexico, obviously Europe, and in the Americas. So it's pretty much everywhere around the world. And, we truly want to make this an international event, both for the artists and the fans that are attending.
Well, I was about to ask what makes this show different and why should people attend, but I think you just answered that.
Yeah, and I think that to us, I think it was twofold. It's number one, focusing just on art, and there's been other art shows that have sprung up in the last few years, but I think that they're hard pressed to have our guest list. I mean, our guest list, I not to pat ourselves on the back, but I think is one of the best that anybody's ever seen because of the international aspect and then the talent. But the other aspect to it is the location. Lake Como is one of the prettiest places in the world. And, one of the things that I think both Arno and I like about the location is, most conventions are like in this huge auditoriums, everything's packed right next to each other. It's like a giant flea market. Whereas here, based on, the location, the number of tickets that we sell, you actually have time to talk to the artists. And, one of the things that we created that artists seem to love the most is putting a chair on both sides of the table so that as a fan, you can sit down, look at the artist so they're not always, craning their neck straight up so that they can work. So it's a combination of the talent, the numbers of people there's no lines, you have time with the artist, and the location. It's just stellar.
You can't just be. It's impossible to beat Lake Como. Even I always say this, but even for such a blasé Parisian like me, who say, "Oh, yeah, I see. Oh, yeah, nice." Honestly, this place, and then I never been to before. Before Steve called me and said, "Hey, you got to come here." I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's one of the most gorgeous location you could ever imagine. So if you're a comic book and art lover and you come to this place, it's paradise. You got everything you would dream of, and it's in Italy, so you also have the food, and it's perfect. Honestly,
Yes.
it's like the easiest sale you could ever imagine.
One of my favorite, Scott, one of my favorite stories, and there's multiple. It's just some of the artists that have shown up. They just go to get lost. And by that I mean they just wander off with their
Sure.
watercolors or their drawing pads and just draw landscapes because it's so pretty.
Absolutely. I mean, this will be my first time at the show. I've actually been to Lake Como before, but many, many, many years ago. But from everything I've heard, this is the true gold standard of a comic art festival. It really is something I'm very much looking forward to. Can you tell us? You mentioned a couple of artists who are going to be there. Can you tell us some other artists who will be attending the show this year?
Arno, I'll let you have that because you got more of the list. But
we're going to have a returning guest, like Bill Sienkiewicz is going to return, and again having his doing the logo, which is so beautiful, and you can see Bill's art in it. It's really great. It's an honor to have it. New guests coming. We're going to have John Romita Jr. is coming, and I'm really, really happy that he'll be there. Another artist I've been wanting to have in our show and even the Paris show for years. So because it was like one of the first I wanted to be able to have is Frank Whiteley, which personally I'm a big fan. So it's going to be really, really, really nice. We're going to have Jordi Bernett. We're going to have Charles Vess also coming, Glenn Fabry. So now the list is going to be really, really great. And we have a lot of returning artists who are becoming, who have been there since the beginning, like Frank Cho and Juan Garnido. And so the more French are coming also, like Régis Loisel, Mathieu Loffray also. Franck Pay is coming. So we're going to try to continue to grow also the international aspect, so that the show, it's like with the art dealers, we have galleries and dealers from both from US and from Europe. Because when you go to a show in US, you're probably going to see always the same art dealers. But I think Como is one of the few locations when you can have a real mix. So if you come from US, you're going to find some art galleries that you've never been to or you never saw before, because they don't travel that much. And if you're European, if you don't go often to US show, you're going to see also US dealers that are usually not traveling too much. So that's one of the unique locations where you can have really a mix of both.
And how does someone go about attending the Lake Como show?
Well, I guess there's two aspects to it. The first one is you can go to the website, LCCAF.com, and purchase tickets. There's links there. From a travel perspective, it's actually fairly easy. And I know that there's been, we've had people comment about, traveling to a foreign country, it's difficult. But the Milan Malpensa Airport is a major international airport serviced by most airlines. That's easy to get to, and the venue is about 45 minutes from the airport. So there's ways to get there, but the easiest is a cab or get a car. Once you get to the venue, there's hotels nearby. English is no problem. I mean, Como is truly an international destination. So, I've never had problems any part of the lake getting by with, my sad Italian. Trying to learn it and working on it, but I wouldn't say I'm even close to fluent.
Nice.
I think it's what I was thinking recently. It's like if you are an American, a US citizen, and you travel from the East Coast to you go from New York to San Diego Comic Con, and if you can manage to do that, which is even more complicated, because finding maybe after a couple of years you used and you find your way, but finding hotels and move around is such a headache, and lines and everything. But if you can manage to do this, or if you live on the West Coast and you go to New York, I mean, you can do the same. You can come to Como. It's exactly the same. It's just when you arrive at the airport, you take a cab and you arrive, and that's it. It's really easy, and it's like 1,000 times less complicated because there are no lines. So you come, you can see it before. You've got, maybe you're going to see two people coming, getting their tickets. You're going to chat. You're going to come back the next day, and you're not going to have like a 1,000 line and say, "Oh, I forgot to wake up at 3 a.m. to go in line." Oh no! You're going to have.
There's no Hall H?
No, there's no Hall H.
Okay, that's a bad joke.
I think the closest to Hall H we get is some of the restaurants nearby.
Well, all this sounds great, but now can you tell me what else is there to do in Como? Now, let me start that off by saying that my wife is very excited to take some boat tours around the lake to different sites. She's already mapped out a couple of days to do that. So, but can you expand on that a little bit?
Oh, sure. I'll do that as kind of the tour guide for the lake, since I've been there. The number one thing I like to do is exactly what your wife has planned. Just take one of the ferries, go up and down the lake, enjoy the views, enjoy the architecture. So obviously that's number one. Como is known for a number of the villas. Not only do you have the Villa Erba, but you've got the Villa Melzi, which is in Bellagio, which is the town that the casino in Vegas was named after. You've got the Villa Carlotta, which is a botanical garden, which in May is still in pretty well in nice bloom. And probably the jewel, at least to me, is the Villa Balbinello, which is in Leno. It was featured in Casino Royale right after Daniel Craig's James Bond got beat up. That's where he recuperated. It was also the villa where Anakin first kisses Padme in one of the Star Wars movies. So you've got that, a number of different small villages, Bellagio, Leno, the town. I love the town of Como, which it's a long walk, but it's probably a half-hour walk from the villa or a 5-10 minute cab ride. But it was an old walled city. And so you've got all of the churches and the restaurants and the shops that you can visit. And then, if you want to get, a little bit out of the lake, you can take a train to Milan, 35 minutes. And according to Frank Cho anyway, Switzerland's about 15 minutes away.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get my wife to avoid going to Milan because or she'll need bigger bags for the shoes she'll be bringing back home. And actually, Amanda is planning on going to Switzerland, so I think Frank is right that it is very close.
Yep.
And the food, and you've got, it's just, you can't, the food, the wine, and, that's a French talking. So I have high expectations, but I mean, this is paradise. Like any restaurant you're going to find, it just.
The only bad meal I ever had in Italy was a Chinese meal that I didn't want to go to. My friends were saying, "Oh, you must be so tired of Italian food. We'll take you to the best Chinese restaurant." And we were happy with Italian food because nothing beats Italian food in Italy. I mean, the risotto is, if you think you've had risotto in the U.S., you haven't. You haven't had real risotto.
Yeah, my Italian friends are like, when you suggest going to a different cuisine, it's like, why?
Right.
And it's understandable.
I agree. Anyway, Steve, Arno, thank you very much for making the time to talk about the show and sponsoring this podcast. We're excited to see all these guests come together in one place, and we're all excited to see you guys in Lake Como. Thank you very much.
I'm excited to have you see Lake Como.
All right.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of Comic Book Pros. A big thank you to Arno Lepere and Steve Morger. I'm Scott Dunbier, and as always, it's been an absolute pleasure guiding you through the colorful world of comic art. Comic Book Pros is produced by Rami and Remzi Batasi. The show is edited and mixed by Mason Bendevi. And don't forget to subscribe and watch every interview on YouTube at Comic Book Pros. Follow us on Instagram and X at Comic Book Pros for updates on future episodes. Until next time, keep dreaming, creating, and exploring the fascinating world of comic art. Goodbye for now.